questions. But I just want to give some brief remarks at the front. It is wonderful to be back in Bristol, back in Virginia, a state that's been good to me. I don't know if you guys remember, I know the mayor probably remembers, this is the first town that I visited in the general election after I won my party's nomination. So, in my mind at least, this is where change began. And that's why I've come back to talk to you about how we're going to deliver on that promise of change. I don't want to, as I said, talk too long, because I do have to take some questions from him. And also, Michelle's probably emailing me about grabbing some milk on the way home. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed that maybe they're selling Newsweek's by the checkout stand, but the latest number of Newsweek says, quote, "The recession is over." I bet you found this news a little startling. I know I did. Because obviously people are going through a tough time all across the country. What is true is that the economy has stopped going through the free fall that we saw at the beginning of the year. The market is up. The financial system is no longer on the verge of collapse. We got news yesterday that for the first time in 3 years, housing prices had actually gone up. When I took office, we were losing jobs at nearly double the rate that we're losing them now. So we may be seeing the beginning of the end of the recession. But as I said before, that's full comfort to the folks who lost their jobs and haven't found another. Virginia's weathering this recession a little bit better than any of the other states. I would like to think that some of that has to do with great leadership here in Virginia. But unemployment, even in Virginia, is now over 7%. And too many Virginia families are being crushed by health care premiums that have doubled over the past 9 years. Something I want to talk about in a minute. So we know the tough times are not over. But we also know that without the steps that we took early on, 6 months ago, our total economy and the pain it's inflicting on Virginia families would be much worse. Let me just run through a few facts. When my administration came into office, we were facing the worst economy in our lifetime, the worst economy since the Great Depression. We were losing an average of 700,000 jobs a month. It was nearly impossible to take out a home loan, or a car loan, or a student loan, or loans for small businesses to make payroll and keep the doors open. And economists across the ideological spectrum, left, right, center, they all thought that it was possible you might tip into another Great Depression. At the time, there were some who thought that doing nothing was an option. I disagreed. I thought we had to act boldly and firmly. So we took steps to end the housing crisis and avert the collapse of our financial system. In less than 1 month after taking office, we enacted the most sweeping recovery package in history. We did so without any of the earmarks for barrel projects that are usually accompanying these big bills. Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there about the recovery package, so I just want to get the record straight. To date, roughly a quarter of the recovery plan's funding has been committed. Over 30,000 projects have been approved, and thousands have been posted online as part of our efforts to be transparent and accountable when it comes to economic recovery. The recovery plan is made up of 3 parts. The first part, about a third of the recovery act, is all about tax cuts for you and the customers here at Kroger. For Americans struggling to pay rising bills with shrinking wages, we kept the promise that I made during the campaign to put a middle-class tax cut in the pockets of 95% of working Americans. 95% of working Americans are getting a tax cut. It started about 3 months ago. You may not have noticed it because it's coming in your paycheck each time you get one, and it's spread out over the course of the year. In addition, small businesses also receive tax cuts, so about a third of the stimulus package or recovery package was actually tax cuts to help folks pay their bills, whether it's shopping here at Kroger's or paying their electricity bill for being able to pay down some credit card bills that they already had. All of which helped to stimulate the economy and boost demand. That was about a third. Another third of the recovery package, the stimulus bill, was to help people and states who had fallen on hard times because of the tremendous financial crisis. So for Americans who were laid off, and some of you probably know folks who were laid off, we expanded unemployment benefits. And that measure has already made a difference in the lives of 12 million Americans and about 150,000 folks right here in Virginia. 150,000 people have extended unemployment insurance. And we're making health insurance 65% cheaper for families who are relying on Kroger while they're looking for a job. Everybody know what Kroger is? Anybody ever been on Kroger or tried to access Kroger? This is a program that allows you to keep your healthcare premiums, pay them if you lose your job. But here's the only problem. If you lost your job, a lot of times you can't afford your premiums. So what we did was we said we pick up 65% of those premiums so that people, even if they lost their job, can still keep their health care. And we provided assistance to the states who were facing historic budget shortfalls, and that saved jobs and protected essential services. That meant you didn't have to lay off teachers, you didn't have to lay off police officers and firefighters. In Virginia, that meant 13,000 staff are still working in the children's schools that otherwise would have been laid off. More than 300 deputy sheriffs are still keeping your community safe. And state colleges and universities like Virginia Tech haven't had to raise tuition as much as they otherwise would have. So that's 2/3 of the recovery is tax cuts for you and help for people who lost their jobs or losing their health care, or for states so that they don't have to lay off teachers and cops and firefighters and other essential services. That's what this recovery package was all about. Now, the last third of the recovery package was making vital investments that are putting people back to work, but are also going to create a stronger economy in the future. We're already seeing the results of these investments, including upgrades to community health centers across Western Virginia and right here in Bristol, allowing them to serve more patients in need of more care. And all across Virginia in this country, we're rebuilding our crumbling roads, our highways, our bridges, as part of the largest new investment of infrastructure in America since Eisenhower built the interstate highway system back in the 1950s. Now, a lot of this is going to take time to complete, and it's not solving all of our problems all at once, but we are stabilizing this economy and moving it forward in part because of the actions that we're taking. We're not going to rest. I'm not going to rest until everybody who wants to find a job can find a job. But there's little debate that the steps that we've taken in the first 6 months help to stop this economic freefall. This has all cost some money to do. Although I've got to admit, when I hear some of the critics talking about out-of-control spending, I can't help but remember those are the same critics who contributed to the $1.3 trillion deficit that I inherited when I walked in. They basically handed me a bill for $1.3 trillion and said, "Here, fix it." And now they're on TV saying, "Why haven't you fixed it yet?" In the middle of the greatest recession since the Great Depression. So we got to keep this in perspective. But what is true is because of the significant debt and deficits that we have, a lot of people are saying we can't go any further in tackling some of our long-term problems. We especially can't do health care. And I understand why people feel like they've got to cut back. Why should government have to cut back as well? Is now really a time for government to wade in and try to do something about health care? I think it is. And let me tell you why. Part of the reason that we're doing this town hall here at Kroger is because Kroger provides health insurance to its associates, as many as it can. And that is significantly different than a lot of companies out there who aren't providing health insurance for their employees. In some cases, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't afford it. And the fact of the matter is that healthcare is going up so fast that I hear from small businesses and large businesses alike that say it's unsustainable. Our costs are going up 20% a year, or or 30% a year, just on healthcare costs. So what happens? Over time, either employers start pushing more costs onto their employees in the form of higher premiums and higher deductibles and other out-of-pocket costs, or they just stop providing health insurance altogether. That's why even if you've got health insurance, you've got to stay to making sure that we can turn this system around. Premiums are going up 1/3 faster than wages. Your out-of-pocket costs are going up 62%. We spend $6,000 more per person on healthcare in this country than any other nation on earth. We're not getting a good deal for the amount of money that we're spending. I said this the other day. If somebody told you that you were spending $6,000 more on the car that you bought than your neighbor, you'd be pretty annoyed. You'd say, I want to get a better deal. And yet we don't do the same thing when it comes to healthcare. We don't get the best deal that we can. And that's why we've got to reform. Let me just talk a little bit about what exactly we're trying to do and what it will mean for you. First of all, no one is talking about a government takeover of healthcare plan. As I was driving up, I saw some signs. Folks were all around us. They're listening to certain radio programs or watching certain cable shows. So somehow I guess they think we're just going to take over healthcare. I tried to say this over and over again. If you're happy with your healthcare, if you're happy with your doctor, we're not going to force you to change it. Kroger is providing healthcare to its employees, then we're not going to change that system. What we are going to try to do is work with Dave and others to see if we can control the costs so that they can keep on providing healthcare at affordable costs to all of you. But we're not going to be changing your system if you're happy with what you've got. Under the reform that I proposed, if you like your doctor, you'll keep your doctor. If you like your healthcare plan, you will keep your plan. Now, if you're one of 46 million Americans who don't have healthcare coverage, you'll finally be able to get quality, affordable coverage. What a lot of chatter out there hasn't focused on is the fact that for people who have health insurance, oftentimes they're still not getting a very good deal. And the reforms that we're proposing will help make dealing with insurance companies a little bit easier for the American people. Let me give you some examples. Right now we have a system that works well for the insurance industry, but it doesn't always work for its customers. What we need and what we will have when we pass these reforms are health insurance consumer protections to make sure that those who have insurance are treated fairly and insurance companies are held accountable. Let me be specific. We will stop insurance companies from denying you coverage because of your medical history, because you've got a pre-existing condition. I'll never forget watching my mother on her hospital bed dealing with cancer, trying to argue with health insurance companies, even though she's been paying her premiums, saying that her cancer was a pre-existing condition, even though it hadn't been diagnosed when she first got her insurance. And I said then, and I continue to believe that that's not right. And I'll bet many of you have heard of somebody or maybe have experienced yourself that same kind of situation. With reform, insurance companies will have to abide by a rule that says they can't drop you just because of a pre-existing condition. And that also means if you lose your job, or if you change jobs, or if you decide to start your own business, that you're not prevented from getting health insurance. That will give you some security, especially in a tough economic situation. With reform, insurance companies will have to abide by a yearly cap on how much you can be charged for out-of-pocket expenses. No one in America should go broke because they're sick. We'll require insurance companies to cover routine checkups, preventive care like mammograms, colonoscopies, or eye and foot exams for diabetics. That way, we can prevent illnesses instead of just paying for them when they're going to the emergency room because they get really sick. No longer will insurance companies be allowed to drop or water down coverage for somebody who becomes seriously ill. It's not right, it's not fair.